Hey Eric, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you, John?
I am surviving. Uh,
Same. My wife's out of town, so surviving is the right way to put it.
oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, you're about to enter the chaos that is the end of the school year. So,
Yeah.
my
Daughter number
sympathies
one graduates Friday
from
from
college.
college. So first four
Congratulations.
year first 4 year graduate, yes. Excited about this. And I still haven't packed. We're heading out tomorrow, late afternoon, and I still need to pack and have a couple last things to finish for work. Yeah. We'll make it.
It's
We'll make
okay.
it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
If the
just
worst
make
that
sure and
happens
pack
is
your
I
credit
forget
card.
my extra socks, I'll be fine.
That's right. You can buy an extra shirt. It'll be okay. It'll be okay.
Yep.
So, well, that's cool. So Easter weekend, and a long weekend for us at least. We got Friday off.
Yeah.
Did you do anything fun?
No. I'm I'm trying to think, what did we do this weekend? I mean, we had a nice Easter dinner. It was mostly getting all the ducks in a row for packing up and heading out. So my wife went out early. Um Yesterday already? Yeah. So she's gone. I'm still here with the boy finishing up school this week.
Uh-huh.
So no, this last weekend was kind of a blur, finding things, making sure things were working. I remember having a yummy Easter dinner. We made these fancy, they're not scallop potatoes. You know the dish ratatouille? Like you see the dish where they thinly
Yeah.
slice all the vegetables and
Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
and they put them all. We kind of make this out of potatoes and cheese and onion.
Ooh, okay.
And with like 3 different kinds of cheeses, and then broil it, and it's
Oh, I like that.
super
That sounds
tasty.
good.
It's very tasty.
Yeah.
It's one of those. It takes a long time to prepare and do, so we don't do it a lot. But
Oh,
Easter is a special time to do it. So
it takes a long time to prepare that. Huh.
it takes a
Okay.
good hour. Yeah. Well, let me rephrase. The way we do it takes a long time.
Okay. Well,
Between prep and
methods.
cook and everything. Yeah.
So, so on Friday, I have a minor, maybe story, maybe funny. I don't know. I don't know. on Friday, so we had Friday off, but the county did not have Friday off. I don't think I've mentioned on the podcast, but I am investigating and planning on putting up residential solar. Like, I want to do
Right.
a solar project and offset most of my electricity. There's lots of reasons for doing this, and I think it'll be good. But when I got the bid, and I had the solar guys come out and look at my barn, because that's where it will have to go, they were like, "Oh, cool. Well, if this is on an ag building, you won't need a structural permit." And I'm like, "Okay, you'll just need an electrical." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "It'll save you about $2,000." I'm like, "Okay." And then he calls me back. He calls me back or emails me later and says, "Hey, so your barn actually isn't flagged as residential or as agricultural by the county. So, here's a website. You can go and get it flagged as an agricultural building, in which case it'll save you some serious money." And, I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "And we can help, but it works better. It tends to work better if the homeowner doesn't." I'm like, "Okay, fine. I will go down there. It's not very far away. It's 15 minutes from my house." So I go down there, and I feel like I need the assistance of the person in The Incredibles. What's the father's name that like helps out the little old lady to penetrate the system?
Yeah.
I have not got it working out. So I go to the permitting place and say, hey, I want to do this. And they're like, oh, okay, you want to do what? So you want to build a barn? No, I don't want to build a barn. I have a barn. I just want it flagged as a barn so that I can do a solar project. They're like, well, here's the solar project format. I'm like, okay, but I just want it flagged as this. And they're like, oh, well, you can have it reclassified, but you have to have, here's this other form. Okay, I got the form. And you have to have a stamp from Health and Human Services that shows the septic system and the barn. Or you have to have a site map that shows the barn and the septic system stamped by Health and Human Services so that you know that the barn is not on the septic system. I'm like, okay. So I go down to the Health and Human Services, and they're like, you want what? I'm like, I just need you to show that the barn and the is not on top of the septic. And I'm like, oh, and by the way, do you have? Can I see the old files for the site? And she does. She's super nice. She emails me. There were 7 previous septic permits on the property, like from like the 70s when things were put in initially, and then in the mid-teens when it was fixed and redone. And I'm like, okay, cool. To which I then have 2 ideas. The first is that I'm like, okay, so on the 2015 septic design, it shows the existing barn and the septic lines with a stamp on showing that the barn is not on top of the septic because the barn predates it by like 2 decades.
Right.
And so I take that to the permitting place, and they're like, I'm like, so this is a stamp from Health and Human Services that shows the barn, it shows the septic, that it's not on. And they're like, no, it has to be within the last year. Okay, fine. So whatever. So I go and do, I got the.
It's because the barn in your septic system could have moved.
Exactly, right?
Right?
I don't know. I'm like, all I want to do is like, what do I need to do so that I can get this checkbox in their computer GIS system checked that says that's an ag building? Like, that's all I want. I want a checkbox. But anyway, so I'm talking to the Health and Human Services people, and they're like, okay, so go online and fill out this form. You need a file review. And just explain in the details what you want. So I'm like, okay. So I go, I find the form, or I find the online form. I have to ask for a permit. There's a drop down that says file review. So I choose file review, and then in the details, I explain what I'm trying to do. And then she had told me that I would need to pay, and I couldn't figure out how to pay. So I it is the most confusing website you have ever been to in your entire life. I'm a computer professional, and I cannot figure out how to get in and edit this form.
That doesn't sound like a government entity to me.
Oh yeah, exactly. So I call her back up. I call up the site, and this was the next day, and I'm like, hey, so I'm trying to do this, and she's asking me some questions. I'm like, well, so I was in there yesterday, and I spoke to a Yvonne, and she said blah blah blah, and she's like, oh, that's me. I'm like, oh, good. Well, you helped me yesterday, and here's what I'm trying to do. And she's like, well, you didn't put file review in the details, which was just a free-form text field. And I'm like, no, there was a drop-down for the type of review you wanted, and I chose file review there. She's like, well, you need to put file review in the details. I'm like, okay, I will try and do that. Oh, and the site plan you uploaded has a stamp on it. I'm like, well, yeah, because I got the site plan out of the previous permit. She's like, well, you can't have a stamp on the site plan that you upload. So I'm like, okay, I will upload a new site plan. And I basically took the same one that I had uploaded, and I took it in an image editor, and I put white squares over where their stamps were, and I saved it again, and I uploaded it again, and then I had to contact her and say, I'm sorry, it does not appear that on the website I can edit the details. I cannot go change my text. And I uploaded the second file that doesn't have the stamps on it, but it does not appear on the website that I can delete the previous file that I had uploaded. Anyway, I feel like I'm fish swimming a little bit up water, and everybody's been very
Kafkaesque.
nice, but I'm like, it really is this hard? And I will be, I don't know, $124 worth of forms in to save $2,000. Because
but is that $124 well spent, or is there still more to come?
Oh, I don't know. I have spent only $61 of this so far because I'm having to wait. I really was hoping that I could just take the previous permit that shows the barn and the septic and say, this is it. I haven't moved anything. See from Google Maps, like Google Maps shows the barn right there. Anyway, no. So I paid the first one, and I'm waiting for them to do the file review. I'm waiting to get a call from a confused, septic analyst who was like, "Hey, I'm out here at your house, and I'm trying to inspect the septic system, and I will have to go." And
it's not under the barn.
I will have to go out and explain to them, I don't need you. We haven't made any changes. All I'm trying to do is I need a new stamp that has today's date on the same image that was uploaded 7 years ago. It says that the barn that was uploaded 7 years ago did not get up and walk away. Right. I don't know. Anyway, so that's one thing, and that's not very fun. And that's a super long story, and I should totally cut out half of that. I don't know what I'm going to do. Anyway, on Saturday, though, I got my new 3 beehives. Or bee colonies, I guess I should say, to be pedantic.
I was going to say, you already have empty hives. Did you get new hives, too?
I got new colonies. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No. I got 3 new nucleus colonies.
And are they happy bees?
There's a lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah. And the first day and a half that I got them, it was beautiful. Well, mostly good. Saturday and Sunday, and they flew, got acclimated. There were so many bees flying around. It was cool. It's awesome. But then the last 3 days, it's been doing nothing but rain.
Right.
So,
they've been hanging out.
I checked yesterday. I need to give them more syrup, but I'm excited.
Well, I blame you because my YouTube feed now has bee videos in it, and
why is that my fault?
I don't have bees. The only person I talk to about bees is you. But they're showing up in my YouTube feed and in different feeds of that I watch. And my problem is now I watch them because I'm interested. And so then more show up.
They're fun. They're cool. No,
I think these would be fun.
There's lots of crazy bee people on YouTube that don't wear a veil and don't wear gloves. And
yeah,
I don't know.
There's this one lady YouTuber that I see all the time. I mean, she's just walking up and she's, and so I found this, and she went and grabbed the bees, goes to this tree, takes a machete, chops out an end, just kind of holds the branch limb, dips it into the bee box, and turns it such a way. Like, how are you not getting stung? Or you are, and you just don't care. Or you're immune. Or something.
A little A, little B, I think.
Yeah.
Although when they've swarmed, their honey stomachs are full, and they're not very aggressive. They're not defensive for their hive or anything like that. So if it's a swarm catch, and they're on a branch or something like that, and they've just got a big mass of them kind of hanging there.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what I saw yesterday she's just taken not machete, just pruning shears.
Pruners?
Just clipping an end and just kind of taking it. Hands. It's like, okay. You that's your expertise. Not going to touch that myself.
Yeah. I have not caught any swarms, or I have not done a swarm call or anything like that. I've put up swarm boxes and caught swarms in a swarm box, but not like up in a tree or anything like that. But I've watched lots of videos about it. Yeah, it's good stuff. All right. Well, hey, I threw one thing into follow-up today, which was...
It's like 3 pages of follow-up, my friend.
Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's... I don't think. But this was a follow-up about Log4Shell. Mm-hmm. So, and in particular... This is bad. This is so AWS, in an attempt to be helpful, released hot patches for Java that, quote, fixed Log4Shell. So Hotpatch is, they'll modify a running process.
Right.
To, to change its behavior until a real patch is available, generally.
Right.
But, and in AWS open sourced these patches, so they could be used for other things as well. So you could technically have used this to try and hot patch, Java processes that weren't running on AWS infrastructure. But the problem is that the way they did this was no bueno. In particular, here's the comment in here. Unit 42 researchers, so this is a Palo Alto link that we'll put in here. Unit 42 researchers identified severe security issues within these patching solutions and partnered with AWS to remediate them. After installing the patch service to a server or cluster, every container in that environment can exploit it to take over its underlying host. For example, if you installed the hot patch to a Kubernetes cluster, every container in your cluster can now escape until you either disable the hot patch or upgrade to the fixed version. Aside from containers, unprivileged processes can also exploit the patch to escalate privilege and gain root. So, essentially what they did was, and AWS released 3 of these, they released this in basically 3 formats. Service that was bundled as an RPM, and you could have requested that this be installed on Fargate hosts. A hot patch daemon set for Kubernetes clusters. So it installs the hot patch service on all the nodes, and Hot Dog, a hot patch solution bundled as a set of OCI hooks. So it says Hot Dog is primarily intended for Bottle Rocket hosts. But essentially the problem is that their service, this patch service, looks continuously for processes that contain the name Java. And if they find it, they consider that a candidate to be patched. But in order to patch it inside the container, it says, oh, well, what version is it? Let me run that Java executable to get its version, and then again to inject the hot patch. But they run, or potentially run, you can basically trick it to run a Java, quote, Java executable of your choice. Right. And that when the service executes it, it executes it at a different privilege level than the user privilege that whatever the target process was spawned as. So basically a pretty trivial escalation. I'm a little surprised that this got as far as it did, to be honest. But that was a article I saw, I think just today, but that made me go, ooh, that's That's not good. That's not good. So AWS has released an updated patch, but at this point too, if anybody's still running a vulnerable application, there's the real fixes are available. So anyway, that was an article I saw today that I thought should count as follow up.
Okay.
In Log4Shell. Anyway, there you go.
Nice. Well, I picked something today that I wouldn't call it strictly security. It fits kind of in the mostly security bucket, I'll say. I think over the last number of years, not just recently, although it's become increasingly obvious to most people now, more recently, is just the amount of misinformation and disinformation that gets widely spread and accepted as truth. And
yeah.
I was reading today, the New York Times has an article about President Barack Obama now really digging in to this whole problem with misinformation and disinformation and trying to see if he can do something about it. And I think the article is great because it kind of lays out a lot of just, the things that I think most people, if they step back and think about it, is obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that, it's not just a political thing, although it seems to spend, misinformation and disinformation seems to spend a lot of time in the edges of political discourse. And whether you're on the right side or the left side, there is misinformation that the other side is propagating. And I think this was an interesting article from the stance that President Obama, I read a quote that he says here is, "I think it is reasonable for us as a society to have a debate and then put in place a combination of regulatory measures and industry norms that leave intact the opportunity for these platforms to make money, Twitter, Facebook, etc., but to say to them that there's certain practices you engage in that we don't think are good for society." Right? And this is this ability to propagate blatantly false information.
Mm-hmm.
And not have to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Say, I don't have to do anything, right? If you look at either side, either side in politics will blame social media for whatever they disagree with, and it really it's not one side or the other. There was a side comment here. I read a thread by the guy who, I don't know if he started Reddit. I don't know if you saw that thread as well.
Well, I don't think so.
But he talked about the whole point. It was in the context of Elon Musk wanting to buy Twitter.
Okay.
Because he thinks their moderation is not what this. He has a problem with it. And the guy at Reddit's like, everybody thinks they can solve moderation. I ran Reddit for years. And it's not a left-wing thing. It's not a right-wing thing. It's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a lot harder to do than anybody. So that was the other thing that caught my eye this week. So I've just been kind of thinking a lot about misinformation and disinformation this week. And this was an interesting article. I think one of the pieces that I'll call out, I mean, we'll link obviously to the article, but that was called out was they compared a potential approach to consumer protection. Well, hold on, let me make sure I get this right. President Obama said, "I think I underestimated to the degree to which democracies were as vulnerable as they were, including ours.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it unfold that there's this degree to which information, disinformation, misinformation is being weaponized." So one of the approaches that could be taken is a potential approach is to go similar to the consumer protection or food safety practices already in place. And I like the quote here. It's, "You may not know exactly what's in a hot dog, but you trust that there is a process for meat inspections that ensures that the food is sold and consumed in this country and other countries around the world, that the food is safe."
Mm-hmm.
And so we just don't have that. And I don't have a solution. Everybody that seems to have anything to do with, content moderation, even for relatively tame sites like Stack Overflow or Wikipedia, where it's not necessarily political driven, it's hard to do moderation and content moderation and make sure that what's going on. So there are clearly a number of regulatory things that are being proposed. Europe is, they started with GDPR. Europe is doing a bunch of others. The EU is doing a number of other regulations. So it's coming. And it's just a matter of whatever we do, can we try to figure out how to be able to sift out the misinformation. Websites like Snopes were always great, but there's just the amount of disinformation just drowns out things like Snopes, or drowns out, pick your favorite newspaper here, and whichever side disagrees with whatever facts that it's doing, they just drown it out, and it's difficult. So
I know.
Like I said, not particularly security-ish, but I've seen a lot of this floating around in the feeds and stuff that I read, and so I thought I'd bring it up here.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the answers. I'm not sure there are, quote, the answers, but two things that I think need to spread a little more are first, transparency. I think that I'm not against anonymity per se, but there's a whole other thing going on right at the moment for yet another situation of an anonymous troll account being linked back to a real person, and the harms that they were doing being exposed. Right. But there's it'd be nice for that to have a consistent application of a standard. And then the second thing is some a measure of accountability. So transparency can lead to accountability if accountability is actually held. So, the thing that I think about in that is, one of the terrible aspects of moderation. I don't know if you remember the stories about how Facebook outsources its content moderation to, these consultant companies, where the moderators actually having to, sort of dwell in the awful parts of humanity are, under intense mental distress. And I mean, that's the sort of thing that I'm not saying that, I want to see the sites that are being done there, things like child abuse, things like snuff films, there's terrible, terrible things. But I want to be careful with my words. I don't, like I said, I'm not sure there's a solution, but if you are watching that kind of stuff on Facebook, then you should be held accountable. There shouldn't be a third strike, so to speak. So I don't know. There's a feeling of superiority and invulnerability when you're slinging insults, when people are slinging insults on the internet and not at the, have another person behind there. I say that, but then there's other people that seem to be just fine with slinging insults like to people in front of their face. So,
well, that's what I think it's degraded to is, when there was a sense of anonymity, but now it's just so commonplace online that people do it in person now.
Yeah, and it's at school board meetings and so
Yeah.
maybe the third thing that I would say here is education. Like so much stems from our lack of investment in basic education across the country. So that's an exciting topic, Eric. Thank you. Appreciate you bringing me down. Appreciate it.
Sorry.
Appreciate it.
Anyways.
All right. Well, I brought a couple other actual topics, not just follow-up topics, I guess. But the first is kind of a funny one. No, it's a terrible one. But did you have anything from Insteon?
I remember them. I think I did. I bought some for work, when we were testing out stuff at work for IoT, but I don't think I ever had any personal stuff.
Okay. So this is a link from Tuesday, this week, that says, quote, "The smart home company Insteon has vanished. The entire company seems to have abruptly shut down just before the weekend, breaking users' cloud-dependent smart home setups without warning. Users say the service has been down for 3 days now, despite the company status page saying all services online. Company forums are down. No one is replying to users on social media." And as Internet of Things reporter Stacy Higginbotham points out, high-ranking Insteon executives, including CEO Rob Lillinus, have scrubbed the company from their LinkedIn accounts. In the time it took to write this article, Lillinus also removed his name and picture from his LinkedIn profile. It seems that is the most communication longtime Insteon customers are going to get. So they're basically, evidently, shutting down and trying to scrub the internet history. So there was comment in there. I don't think I pulled it out, but that archive.org has has instances of things that used to exist. But I haven't seen other fallout from this yet, although it did say that there was a Reddit Insteon, an Insteon Reddit that is, where the users are venting currently, and that though their protocol has been reverse engineered, so it's possible that you can control their devices with a different hub. But one of the things that they said in here to be careful of is don't factory reset your devices, or at least your Insteon hub, because one of the setup steps is they'll try and contact Insteon servers, and that will fail. So, and I guess unless they have a pinned key, until somebody else sets up a way to intercept that traffic, with a proxy or something like that, and play back whatever it needs.
No security updates for you.
No security updates. Well, no worky.
Yeah. Well, even if you got it working with, some of the open source options.
Oh yeah. No security updates, for sure. And
bummer.
That's the sort of stuff that, back a little bit to the point about disinformation, maybe, should part of some device purchase be a, payment into what's the credit union insurance thing,
the
not FICA.
NCIS. No, not NCIS. What?
What,
I know what you're talking about.
sorry. Yeah, like all your deposits are secured for,
Yeah, up to
some
whatever
amount.
amount.
Um, anyway, is there something similar to that can or should be done for like IoT devices? It just doesn't make sense for like, a $25 thing or a $5 thing.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything. But
To be fair, they don't have a website titled killedbygoogle.com, which has hundreds of things that Google has killed off. But
I don't know, what is there something different about pure software versus hardware? I mean, in the long term, maybe not. In the short term, it sure seems, I don't know, maybe it's just there's a mental difference between like, hey, I have this thing that I'm holding in my hand and I can no longer use.
True.
It's an old man thing. Okay. Hey, I paid for this software I can no longer use. And maybe it's as bad.
I don't know. I still have that box of Google glasses. Actually, no, I don't. I left it at my desk because it wasn't mine.
Okay. All right. My second article was I tried to see if this was follow up to, because I swear we talked about this or one of these last year, but this is Google Project Zero released their year in review for 2021 for 0 days. So this is Maddie Stone released wrote the blog. And so this was a summary of the, projects, the 0 days used in the wild in 2021. And so it's the third year that they've done an annual review, although they've been tracking. There's a spreadsheet you can go to that has the known in the wild 0 days that they've tracked in kind of an open spreadsheet, which is cool. But this was an interesting article. It had some stats. The big one of which is that 2021 saw the detection and disclosure of 58 in the wild exploited 0 days, which is more than any previous year. In fact, it's nearly double, not quite, previous year. It looks like 2015. See if it actually says that. I'm looking at the chart, but it doesn't, and that didn't have a number on it. 28 previously. So I guess that's technically more than double by 2.
Mm-hmm.
And there were only 25 detected in 2020. Not detected, exploited in 2020. So, this is a good article. There's some other stuff in here. I pulled out a few other cogent facts, I think. The first one of which is that this is really hard to report on. Like, historically at least, you'd only really know something was exploited in the wild if it had kind of mass exploitation. A lot of times, something fixed in Patch Tuesday or something like that would, engender exploits, fairly quickly after. But, knowing whether or not it was exploited before was, the disclosure of that was kind of hit and miss. And the article says that one of the beliefs they have for here's the quote, the large uptick in the wild 0 days in 21 is due to increased detection and disclosure rather than simply increased usage. So
right.
They say that the vendors. So there's 2 other points in this. The first of which is that the vendors are detecting in the wild 0 days in their own products more than before. and disclosing it at least. So, for example, Google had it says Google discovered 7 of the in the wild 0 days in their own products, and Microsoft discovered 10. So, it didn't say, at least in the summary, how or why, but, essentially via telemetry, it's often the case that the platform vendor is in the best position to be able to detect when something is being exploited. And so, better visibility in there and better reporting can result to higher numbers. And then the second thing is that while some vendors, and so for example, Google Chrome, they said, had been annotating security bulletins for several years, both Apple and Android began annotating the bugs, like when they have a disclosure, they began annotating it with whether or not they believe there was an exploit being used in the wild. And so that means that there are more things essentially on this list, not because they were disclosed by somebody else or into the press, but because when the patch notes came out, there was an annotation on the patch note that says that there are indications of exploitation. So the comment in here is that it says, if Apple and Google Android had not begun annotating their release notes, the public would likely not know about at least 7 of the Apple in the wild 0 days and 5 of the Android in the wild 0 days, because these vulnerabilities were reported by anonymous reporters. If the reporters didn't want credit for the vulnerability, it's unlikely they would have gone public to say there were indications of exploitation. So that's an additional 12 0 days out of the 58 that probably wouldn't have been included if Apple and Google hadn't been annotating their security advisories.
Right.
So good stuff. The final thing I was going to say on this, I think, there's lots of data in here, by the way. I mean, lots of charts.
Lots of charts, yeah.
Lots of charts, lots of data. But the sort of asks that they have here is, they're trying to make progress on daunting goals. So, I love it. So so they're asking for, essentially 3 concrete steps. So step 1, make it an industry standard behavior for all vendors to publicly disclose when there is evidence to suggest a vulnerability in their products being exploited. So that's awesome. That's number 1. And clearly Apple and Google are doing that for the annotated disclosures. Microsoft, they didn't say for annotated disclosures, although I swear that I've seen that in some of the things I've read. But that I know Microsoft, they credit Microsoft earlier for discovering 10 of the 0 days that were being exploited themselves. So anyway, that's enough of the big vendors to try and make a standard. Their second suggestion is for vendors and security researchers to share exploit samples or detailed descriptions of the exploit techniques. Now that's kind of tricky if that's being done prior to a vulnerability or prior to a patch being available. I don't think that's I don't think it's cut and dried that something should be released publicly like that. But they're not saying public release. They're saying vendors and security researchers sharing. So that could be, with some level of sort of accredited sharing. And their third suggestion is continued concerted efforts on reducing memory corruption vulnerabilities or rendering them unexploitable. So that makes me think of the Blastdoor work that Apple did for messages, and other ways that the OS and large platform vendors can, build infrastructure that makes exploitation harder. So it's certainly good stuff. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that was, I think that might have just come out certainly this week, but maybe even today.
Nice.
No, yesterday. So anyway, that was my second article.
All right.
Good stuff. All right.
I have something fun.
All right. Show me something fun.
All right. So you know what a supernova is, right?
I do.
Some big giant star dies, boom, supernova.
Okay.
And then there is the not quite as big because it drops the supernova, right? A white dwarf, boom, blows up.
Okay.
Astronomers have now discovered what they're calling a micronova.
I have not heard of this.
No, it is. Astronomers have detected a previously unknown type of stellar explosion, which they're calling a micronova, involving thermonuclear blasts at the polar regions of a type of burned out star called a white dwarf after it has siphoned off material from a companion star. So we now have micronovas, regular novas, and supernovas. So there you go. That's my something fun this week.
I love it. I did not.
Short
I have
and
not
sweet.
read. Short and sweet. Okay. Okay. A micronova.
Micronovas. Yeah.
Okay. And documented on 3 different white dwarfs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm scanning the article. All right, I will have to.
Not misinformation.
Okay. There you go. Thank you.
I just brought it down, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. Okay. Well, I'm not sure that my something fun. I decided I was going to have my something fun be the show Severance, because I think you said that you finished watching it.
I did watch it, and to be honest, I had to skip through. I jumped through it. I kept hitting the forward 15 seconds multiple times because there was a lot of hallway walking. There was an excessive amount of white corridor walking.
I don't know that I have ever 15 seconds skipped a show that I was actually trying to watch.
The first, I'll say the first 4 episodes. The first 4 episodes after each one, I was like, I'm not going to continue watching. And then, something would happen. I'd be like, well, I'll start watching it. So I'd start watching and I'd be like, well, let's just skip through a little bit. And then there would be just enough of a hook. Then after the 4th or 5th episode, I was like, okay, now this is now starting to get interesting. Because it started going all sorts of weird ways. And there was a number of, it was a weird show. The last episode, though, holy crap.
Exactly.
Now it's like, okay, now I need season 2. But
exactly.
up until the last episode, I was like, I was not into it. So, anyways, sorry. It's your something fun, and I totally just gave you my 2 cents.
No, I want your 5 cents. I want. It's all good.
That's my nickel's worth.
Yeah. You're right though. It's I think the producers of something like that must be playing more around human psychology than they are, just the story.
Well, the cinematography was fascinating. The camera angles and how, especially because there's a very distinct visual when you're an innie versus when you're in your outie, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting from a cinematography, whatever that word is I'm trying to say.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was interesting from that. And that was kind of cool. It had this 1970s modern 1970s vibe to it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Okay. So the summary, though, so a little bit of show summary would be that. So it's just one season, 9 episodes, I think. Mm-hmm. And the premise is that they have these people have volunteered to have a severance procedure done on them, which basically changes that, when they're in the elevator, they change to be at work or at home, an innie or an outie, and neither one remembers the other. So
right.
At a certain point in the elevator, they flip over and they're like, "And I'm back, okay." And interesting things ensue. But at a slow pace for the first few episodes, for sure.
Yeah,
as they're trying to set the status, set the plot. I will be. It does not feel like the sort of show that can go back to super slow after the last episode.
It's a completely different show. There's no way it can be the same show. I mean,
anyway, they hooked me for season 2. So let's see what happens and when it comes out. But I would say it's worth your 9 hours, because I think they were hour episodes, ish.
Something like that. Well, the great thing about streaming is they tell the story they want to tell, and it's either 40 minutes or 50 minutes or 60. It's not a fixed 23.5 minutes sitcom.
Yeah.
To fit with the commercials in a half-hour period. So
yeah,
I do appreciate that about streaming services.
It's good. And I what service was it on? Was it Apple TV?
Apple TV.
Apple Plus. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm a real team player when it comes to my Netflix, Hulu, Apple Plus, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, that was my something fun. All right, my friend. Let's call it a wrap. And I hope that you have a good rest of your week. Travel safely. And we'll talk to you later.
Yep. See you, John.
All right. Bye.
Bye.